Hello and good afternoon, everyone. Thank you so much for joining our live stream this afternoon. My name is Gabby, and I work as a community liaison with the Caregiver Resource Center of Orange County. And today you joined us for our live stream, which is all about in-home care. And before we get into our material for today's live stream, we wanted to give you a brief overview of the services we offer as the Caregiver Resource Center of Orange County. So let's get into that. So a bit about the history of our center. We've been serving Orange County since 1988, almost 40 years. We are a program of St. Jude Community Services. So we're attached to St. Jude Hospital in Fullerton, but you don't have to have Providence Insurance to work with our center. And we are a part of a system of California Caregiver Resource Centers. So there are 11 total in the state, and there's one that serves every county in California. So we serve all of Orange County. There's one for LA, Riverside, etc. And we're funded federally through the Older Americans Act and by the county through the Family Caregiver Support Program. So who are we? We are a trusted partner for Orange County families who are coping with the physical, emotional, and financial responsibilities of caregiving. Okay. Our center's mission is to increase the quality of life of caregivers by helping families and communities master the challenges of caregiving. Our whole goal is to make sure that caregivers don't feel alone in their journey and have the proper support to care for themselves and their loved one. Okay. And this slide here kind of gives like a brief overview of all we have to offer. So we do offer support groups both virtually and in person. Some of our groups are themed, so we have like a men's support group, art support group, dementia care support group, etc. And we offer them in 3 different languages: English, Spanish, and Vietnamese. And anyone is allowed to access those groups. So you can be from any kind of county, anywhere in the U.S., and join one of our groups. Uh, Anyone can have access to our specialized information. So you can call us for a list of in-home agencies or adult day programs in the county, and we'll be more than happy to assist you with that. And also, anyone and everyone has access to our education and training classes and our legal workshops. And our schedule can be found on our website. For our registered clients who meet our eligibility, they have access to our individual counseling. They're also assigned one of our social workers who we call our family consultants, and they help them complete a caregiver assessment to help out with creating goals for the care of their loved one. And our most popular registered client service is our respite assistance. So we do have grant funds that can pay for in-home care or out-of-home care for a short time to give the caregiver that time off. Next slide. And this slide here kind of gives like a brief. It's like a handout that we like to give to our caregivers. We find that once we get them that time off and that break, they're not really sure on like how to spend it for self-care. So this slide here kind of gives you like some ideas on how to use that time for self-care. There's climb a tree, engage in a small act of kindness, dance, give thanks, things like that. Next slide. And yeah, so now we'll get into the topic for today's live stream, which is all about in-home care. So today we've invited some esteemed representatives from a couple of in-home agencies that service Orange County to answer some commonly asked questions from families when considering in-home care. Please help me in welcoming Danielle Tolentino Tucson, who is the managing owner of Seniors Helping Seniors. Kayer Shaw, owner and senior care advisor of Senior Helpers of Coastal OC. Estela Casal, marketing director of Loving Arms Care. And last but not least, Tracy Anderson, director of client experience with Senior Helpers of North Central OC. Thank you all so much for joining me this afternoon. I know the information you're going to share is going to be very valuable to families who are looking to connect with in-home care. So yeah, I just really appreciate your time and assistance with this. So we'll get into the questions, and then I'll leave it up to all of you to answer. But we'll start with our first question, and I'll ask it to Danielle. So Danielle, for our first question is, what is in-home care?
Thank you so much for that, Gabby, and the Caregiver Resource Center for creating these opportunities for people to receive education. Happy to be here. In terms of what is in-home care, really why in-home care, right? Home care at its heart, it is about the tasks, definitely an important part. But really what home care is bringing is peace of mind. You know, there's a lot of family members who may be juggling a lot in addition to caring for their aging loved one. And so maybe you need a little bit of extra help. Maybe you're trying to figure out how to do it all and it's just not quite working. And so we can come alongside you as in home care to provide that additional support. Another thing is that a lot of times our loved ones, they do want to stay home as long as possible, as long as it's safe, and they want to do it independently. And so what in-home care is that opportunity to bring the support that's needed to allow that independence to continue with that extra support that might that help with that. So ultimately, what in-home care is about is we're trying to improve quality of life by providing support for their day-to-day tasks and needs that they want to do.
Thank you so much for that. Um, yeah, and then I'll move on to our second question, and I'll address it to Care. So Care, what kind of tasks or services can an in-home caregiver help you with?
Once again, thanks, Gabby, for inviting me. Hello, everybody. So the tasks for a caregiver can vary depending on the needs of the individual. They can range anywhere from full personal hygiene care. This includes things like bathing, toileting, feeding, dressing, physically lifting and helping with mobility. But it can also be something that's a bit lighter than that, to what we call companion care, which could include things like assisting with household chores and tasks, things like laundry, changing the sheets, putting the dishes away, helping make some meals, medication management, and also sometimes help with pet care as well. And one other thing that people don't think about is that caregivers can also help with transportation. So many times, older adults may or may not have the ability to drive or need a little bit of support getting to places like doctor's appointments, as an example. So that's something that caregivers can do as well.
Thank you for sharing. And I didn't know that transportation was also part of the services, so that's good to know. Thank you. Now I'll go to our third question, and I'll address it to Estella. So Estella, what type of training does the in-home caregiver receive with your agency?
Hi. Well, thank you again for having me here. Appreciate it. So, going with your question, what type of training? So, of course, at Loving Arms Caregiving, we really focus on making sure our caregivers are prepared. So, before entering the home, so of course, they complete the training required for home care aides in California. But in addition, we also provide agency specific training based on the needs of the clients they'll be serving. So, that includes areas like personal care, activities of daily living, infection control, safety and fall prevention, recognizing and reporting changes in a client's condition, and understanding professional boundaries and caregiver responsibilities. And we also look at the individual client. If someone has those specific mobility needs, cognitive changes, we want to make sure that the caregiver understands the care plan and is comforting that support before we place them in the home. Because at the end of the day, training is important, but so is making sure the caregiver understands the individual person they're caring for, because when possible, we really prioritize the continuity of care because we know how important that relationship becomes in the long run. And so having a familiar caregiver can make clients feel much more comfortable in their home and allows a caregiver to become familiar with their routine, preferences, and needs, And so going with that, we try to establish as much consistency with the schedule, but we understand that sometimes our caregivers may be sick, take time off, or there's a scheduling change. So we can't always guarantee that it'll be the same caregiver, but we try our best, and we do encourage that our families let us know if there's a specific caregiver that they really connect with. We'll make every effort to make sure that that caregiver returns with them. And the opposite is true too. If they don't connect with the caregiver, please let us know, and we will make sure that we find you the right match, because we believe that that is an important part of a successful home care.
Thank you so much for sharing. And I'll go to our fourth question, and I'll address it to Tracy. So Tracy, what are the health requirements my loved one must meet to participate in in-home care?
Well, hello, Gabby and everybody. Thank you so much for having us here to talk about home care. So let's talk about requirements. There really isn't any medical requirements needed to have home care. You know, home care can range from everything from a diagnosis of dementia or some kind of medical condition all the way to companionship. And that's, I think, what some families really need to keep in mind when seeking home care. You know, a lot of seniors, they live alone and they want to stay in their home and they want to age in their home. So if they're simply lonely and they don't have family around to do pop-in visits and take them to lunch, that's something that home care companies can absolutely do. So as far as a medical requirement, there is none. But the difference is we do need to differentiate between home health and home care, because if there is specific diagnosis of like wound care or higher level medical needs, they might need to look into home health care and then be assisted with home care next to them, like a hospice company. A lot of times, if the diagnosis is imminent, you know, we'll have hospice companies coming in and popping in and out and doing the general medical needs of the client. But home care is the one that's standing by, sometimes on a 24-hour basis, doing their bathing and cleaning them and helping with their medication reminders and companionship and compassion. So there's a lot more avenues of home care than people might realize than just some of the ADLs, which is the daily tasks that might be needed. So to answer the question, there is no medical requirement for home care.
Thank you for sharing, Tracy. Now I'll move on to our fifth question, and I'll leave it open to whoever wants to answer, because I feel like it might be different for each agency. But as an in-home agency, do you have insurance, and what are you regulated by?
So I don't mind
Oh, I
jumping
can
in
jump
on
in.
this one. Oh,
Go ahead,
You
Danielle.
both
we
can.
are, sure thing, Care. We are regulated by the state of California. And so all of us are registered agencies with the state of California. And with that, we are required to hold insurance. And so we are insured, bonded, licensed. All of our caregivers are registered with the state as well. And the thing that's great about going with an agency that I always like to remind families is that, you don't want to spend your time also being an employer. It's actually a lot of work to upkeep all the requirements that we're regulated by. And you also would be held responsible for employing someone. And so by going with an agency, we have things like workers' comp in place. We're taking care of making sure they get paid properly and all their taxes are done appropriately. And that's just, that's also required of us as being agencies in the state.
And then, Kayer, you wanted to share as well?
She covered it. Danielle's great.
Nice. Well, thank you both. And now I'll move on to our sixth question, and I'll pass it back to Tracy. So Tracy, for a family caregiver, what does that first call to your agency feel like?
Yeah, so the first call to an agency can be different every single time. I really feel like you never know what you're going to get on the other line when a family is first calling looking for information on home care. You know, the important thing really is to learn to listen, learn to ask the right questions, um, support them in knowing that they are not alone and there are resources that we can help with the entire process. Um, you know, it's a lot of times you get very stressed people. You know, they're caring for their loved one. They could have caregiver burnout, which is very common. They could be frightened, angry, upset, lonely, scared. There's a lot of different emotions that can go into that first call. And it's important for the agencies to really understand that this is an emotional time for that caller and they need some guidance. And so I try really, really hard not to overwhelm them with too much information, but to listen to what the needs are, the situation of the person that they're looking for care, and ask specific questions and tell them that there are resources. I might not go into all of the resources at that moment because, again, I don't want to overwhelm them. I want to just let them know they're not alone. I do also follow up with an immediate email, which I tell them at the beginning of the call that I will be sending immediately after the call with all of the information that I just gave them, including pricing and services so that they don't have to write it down. A lot of times when you're having that first call or you're calling for the first time, if you've got a referral from someone else, there might be some other agencies calling and so their phone is blowing up. So that can also add to the stress of trying to keep track of what companies are calling and who's calling and what they're offering and what the prices are. So truly just reassuring them that they're not alone, and then that the next step would be a complimentary, no cost, no pressure life profile assessment with senior helpers is what we call it. That we would come to their home and sit down with them and really get a little bit deeper of concerns and what matters most to them, and move forward from there if it's a good match for them. I always put that as well. I'm not into the pressure sales pitch kind of approach. I feel like it's really important that they understand that we are here to support them and not to sell them on something. This is a service and a very important one that we're going to walk the journey with them.
Thank you for that. Now I'll go to our seventh question, and I'll address it to Danielle. So Danielle, what does the process look like from the first call to when I actually have an in-home caregiver in my home? Like what?
Yes, that's a really good question. So, from the first call, not hardly ever are we getting a call where someone who's calling knows exactly what it is they want. Like, I want this caregiver, that type of caregiver, this schedule. This is what the services I need. So it's okay if you feel like you're not sure what you need on that first call. That's actually okay. What it looks like in the beginning is maybe you have some worries or you're overwhelmed by something. Or maybe something has changed with your loved one that you just have questions about what you should do now. Really, what the first step is when you call, it's our job to help you figure this all out. So what I would recommend to families in the beginning is just talk about what's on your mind currently in that moment. Maybe there was a recent fall, maybe a recent hospitalization, or just something different the last time you visited your loved one. Share those kinds of details and even share how you feel, share how they feel, because that first part of the process is like the most important part. It's when we as the home care agency are really going to try and understand, what is it that's getting harder? And because we've seen so many scenarios like yours, we can also predict, okay, what's the path that they may need be heading down, so that we can anticipate the care needs for your loved one. The other thing that we're going to want to know about is more about them as a person, not just the tasks that they need, but maybe what are their interests, their preferences, their personality. And that can be determined during that first call, but it also continues, we continue to learn about them in what we call an in-home visit or an assessment, when we can go and actually meet the person who needs care and really get to know what their care needs are going to look like. And we're also assessing the home for safety, but we're also assessing what the care needs are for this individual. And that then allows us to present some care goals. What are we trying to achieve? Where is this person currently at, and where can they go? Where can they go from here with the right match of the right care plan and the right care team? And that's really what happens next, is that your home care company should put together a plan and a care team that's going to be a right fit for you. And of course, from there, we have the first visit and we meet, we greet, everyone's getting to know each other. What I would recommend is, sometimes that takes a few visits for everyone to get comfortable, or sometimes it happens right away. Everyone's different. But don't think of that as the end, that once you've been matched, that's it. You need to continue to have good communication with your home care company. They will likely do the same. It's a process of making sure that everyone is in sync of what's happening. And as changes happen, then you can expect the care to change as well.
Thank you so much. Now let's go to our 8th question, and I'll address it to Kayer. So Kayer, what would the process look like if the caregiver is not a good fit for the family?
Yeah, this is a really important question, Gabby, because while most caregivers can actually do the job when they're in their home, not everybody will be a good fit and be compatible. And that's really important for us. It's important to the family. It's also important to the caregivers. So everyone's trying to make sure that we get the fit right. So the process is that initially, just like how Danielle mentioned, that we spend some time to learn about the individual or the elder at home. We try to understand who they are as a person, not just what their tasks are. We use that as part of our caregiver matching to try to align them with someone who has similar interests, similar backgrounds, similar hobbies, for example. Right? Of course, the expertise and the availability needs to match as well. And then we use our experience, we use our judgment, we use our caregiver matching process to match these two people together. Now, do we get it right all the time? No, we don't. Most of the times we do. There might be a few instances where we thought we did, but we don't. And in that case, we act really quickly. We encourage our families to have a conversation with us right away at the end of the first shift itself and give us some feedback on how they liked caregiver Ashley, as an example. And if there's any feedback that is not exceptional, and if they would like to find another person, we'll make that change right away. We don't want to wait for a week or two and let it fester, right? So if there is any sort, and it may not necessarily be a big deal, it could be something as simple as she's too loud, or she speaks too softly, or she laughs funny and it bothers me. It could be things like that. We don't take it personally. We know our caregivers don't take it personally. What we want to do, what all of us want to do, is find the right person in the right home. So we're quick to act and make sure that if there is not a great fit, we'll make sure that it is the right fit and the person is compatible with your loved one.
Thank you so much. And for this next question, I'll leave it like open ended for anyone who wants to answer, because I imagine again like it's different for every agency. But what would the process look like if a caregiver violates protocol, such as negligence or abuse? Or just any kind of like infraction?
Well, Gabby, first and foremost, home care. I mean, we are going into the homes of vulnerable adults, and so we do not take that lightly. Trust is the most important aspect of home care. And so, what our process would be is first, client safety first. Whatever is needed for the client to be safe, that's going to come first. Um, if a family has any concerns, even if they're just unsure, they think maybe, I mean, they should always feel comfortable to communicate their concerns. So families know that communication is a really big part of of home care and having home care be successful for your family in both directions. Things need to be reported right away. We document, we investigate. And of course, if needed, the caregiver would be removed if that's what's appropriate for the situation. And we have mandatory reporting requirements as well of us. We're mandatory reporters. So if we suspect any abuse or neglect, we would have to notify the appropriate authorities.
Thank you.
I'll just add to that, Gabby. I think this is a very critical issue, and it does happen, right, in the industry in general. The more important thing, the really important thing, is to act quickly, and we want to ensure that we do that. If there is even the shred of doubt, right, that there is something that isn't right, then we want to make sure that our clients and their families' safety and their quality of life remain at the maximum level possible. And if there's anything that is a hindrance to that, we want to jump in right away and try to rectify. So the speed is really important as well in this case.
Mm-hmm. Thank you both so much. Now I'll move on to our next question, and I'll address it to Estella. So Estella, will my family member get the same caregiver every time? And how can I go about requesting the same caregiver?
Oh, okay. So, will my family member get the same caregiver? So we try our best to give them the same caregiver. If they let us know, like, we connect really well with them, we will definitely prioritize that because we think that's super important to have a match. But of course, as I mentioned earlier, if, for example, the caregiver is sick or has a scheduling conflict because of a scheduling change or anything of that matter, then we would have to give them another caregiver. But again, like I said, if they really like someone, we were going to do our absolute best to make sure that that caregiver is there for them, because the right match is, like I said, our priority. And I think it makes the world of a difference to be connected with someone, because if you are not feeling comfortable with the caregiver, it's just not good for anyone. It'll put the family, like, they won't be at ease. So we definitely, like I said, encourage the feedback. Let us know how you feel after that day. After that shift, please call us, let us know. And so how can you go about requesting the same caregiver? So again, give us a call, let us know that you really connected with that caregiver, and we will do the absolute very best to make sure that that caregiver is there for them. And
Thank you. And this is another like open-ended question. So I'll let anyone answer. But would it be best practice to have a regular schedule or call in as needed?
I can answer that one, or start to answer it. So it depends on really the expectation, I think, of the family. The best practice, I would think, is to have a regular schedule, because the more regular the schedule is, the more consistent the caregiver can be. Caregivers want that consistency. They want to get to know their client. They want to build a relationship with them. So if consistency is important to the family and to the client, it's really important to have a consistent schedule. If they're going to have a Saturday night one night and a Monday morning another, and it's different every week, it gets very, very complicated to try and keep a consistent caregiver on that. But with that being said, some families, they don't need a consistent schedule, and they just call as needed. If they have a doctor's appointment and it's more of a transportation situation, it's fine to call as needed. Giving as much time possible does help relieve the stress of the scheduling team to get the shifts filled. But if that's what their desire is, then that's okay as well. It just depends on what their needs are, if that makes sense.
Thank you, Tracy. And we'll throw it right back to you for our next question. So, Tracy, what is the typical range of cost of in-home care? And are there other ways to pay for care that aren't out of pocket?
Really good question and very important, because money it's hard. People are not have some of the cash to pay for some of the care that they need. So asking the question about other options besides out of pocket. But to answer the question to begin with, about the average cost in Orange County, I'm going to say, after a little bit of research, that the average cost of home care non-medical is about $38 to $45 per hour. It can depend on the client's needs, and it can also depend on the agency. But in general, I think that's a pretty good average. Maybe if anyone else has a different answer, they can chime in when I'm done. But also asking, what I really like to do on the phone call conversation is ask, before we get into the cost of out of pocket, do you have any long-term care insurance? Because that would probably be the next most popular way of paying for non-medical home care. Long-term care insurance policies, sometimes a family might not even know that one exists. And a lot of times these seniors have been paying into these policies their whole life, and for many, many years. And so asking them about a long-term care policy and kind of explaining what that is important. And once they do say, if they say, oh yes, we do have a long-term care insurance, I do like to go over a couple key points when they call the insurance. And definitely one of them would be, is there a grace period? A lot of long-term care policies do have grace periods where you have to use out-of-pocket pay 30 days, 60 days, sometimes even 90 days. And also, let them know about the ADLs minimum. You do have to have, I believe it is 2 ADLs that are required to open the policy. So I like to kind of coach them on that before they reach out to the long-term care insurance company. There also is the Medi-Cal programs that for lower income, but you do have to look out for the criteria for that as well. And those are usually financially driven. There's VA, looking into the Veterans Administration and calling the Veterans Office to see if they were a veteran, if they have any benefits, and if so, how can they use them. Medicare, for the first time in the history of Medicare, there is a program called the GUIDE program. And this is a 7-year model pilot program through Medicare for dementia patients. So the criteria to meet the GUIDE program is pretty simple, pretty basic. It's three criterias, and one of them is that you have dementia or a diagnosis of dementia. Number 2 is that you have a non-paid caregiver that's caring for you. Can't be an agency. It has to be someone that's not being paid. Number 3, that you do not live in a assisted living or a skilled nursing. And number 4, there's 4, that you have Medicare A and B and not an Advantage plan. So like if you had SCAN or something of that matter, it would disqualify you. So there's that option for dementia patients now that Medicare is providing. I believe it's 76 hours a year. And that has never been, it's an amount, but it's never been done through Medicare. So it is a start. And then lastly, Gabby, there is the Caregiver Resource Center, which does have the respite grants. It's an amazing program over there. I know you guys have been kind of suffering with some budget cuts, but they are still available to certain families that are really in need of some financial support. And it's just a matter of calling the Caregiver Resource Center and then being connected to a family care manager, and they'll go through the process of that with you if you do apply. But that's kind of all I know of. If anyone else has any, please chime in. But from the top of my mind, that's the ones I came up with. Other than that, it is out-of-pocket private pay.
Thank you. Yeah. So now we'll go to our next question, and I'll address it to Danielle. So Danielle, how is in-home care different than in-home health?
Gabby, this is a really good question because I think there's a lot of confusion sometimes around the difference between home care and home health. So let's say, for example, let's say your dad was in the hospital. And as you know, in the hospital, they're getting around the clock care, medical care. And let's say his medical team decides that it's okay for him to go home, but to remain safely at home, the medical care needs to continue at home. That is where home health comes in. They were getting that round the clock care in the hospital, but maybe now at home, a nurse is coming to their home, and that nurse is monitoring that specific, medical issue that they're having, and communicating back to the medical team so they can continue to do the care that they need medically in their own home. It could also look like home health can also look like, a physical therapist coming into the home and helping that person regain their strength by doing physical therapy in the home. Or other specialists, like let's say they need wound care. A wound care nurse could be coming in. All of those types of supports are medical and they are provided by home health. Now, the difference, and where people sometimes get confused, they're like, oh, home health's coming into my home. We're all set. We don't need home care. But then they'll realize that no, there is still a need for home care in between these medical visits. The medical visits are just that. They're very focused on the medical needs that the person needs. Our agencies are non medical. And so think about all the day-to-day things that they would need, similar to what KR talked about of the tasks that we do. Maybe they need help preparing a meal. Maybe they need assistance with their mobility at home. Maybe, they need some help tidying up the home, or they need help with hygiene and personal care. Those are the types of things that home care can do in between home health visits. And so these are definitely not competing services. If anything, they are complementary, and you would have both of these in your care team to really stay safe at home.
Thank you. And now I'll move on to our next question, and I'll address it to Kair. So, Kair, how long can someone receive home care services through your agency? Like, is there?
Sorry, Gabby, you broke off in the back end.
Yeah. How long can someone receive home
Mhm.
care services through your agency, and is there a limit?
There's no limit. It's essentially as long as the individual needs care, right? I mean, we're in the caring business, so we want to make sure, like what's been said earlier, that the safety and the quality of life is maintained. And however long that might be, we as a company don't have any hourly minimums, so we could offer care for 1 hour and all the way up to 24-hour care. In fact, we have families right now that at senior helpers we're serving that require 1 hour shower visits. And on the other end of the spectrum, we have someone who's on hospice that requires round the clock care, 24 hours. So as long as the individual needs care, the family feels like they're benefiting and getting value, we'll continue to provide the care.
Nice. That's good to know. And then for our next question, I'll address it to Estella. So, Estella, what type of care would you recommend for someone who needs skilled medical support, like wound care, injections, etc.?
Okay, so before going into that, I just want to reiterate again how important it is for families to understand the difference between non-medical home care and home health, which Danielle did an amazing job explaining, because like her agency, we are also non-medical home care. So at Loving Arms, we provide non-medical in-home care, so our caregivers can assist with things like bathing, dressing, mobility, meal prep, medication reminders, companionship, transportation, and other activities of daily living. So if someone needs skilled medical services such as wound care, injections, or other nursing services, we would recommend working with a licensed home health agency or another medical provider. But as also Danielle mentioned, sometimes families need both, and it's actually better because they work together. So a home health professional may come in for the skilled medical service, while a non-medical caregiver will provide the ongoing day-to-day support that helps the person remain safe and comfortable at home. And yeah, so it goes hand in hand. So yes.
Nice. Thank you. And then for our next question, I'll leave it open for anyone to answer. Because I'm sure it's like it varies for company. But how does your agency schedule hours? And are there limits and are there minimums? And Kara, I think you already like touched on that on the question before, but would anyone like to answer that on how you schedule hours?
Well, I had
Is
mentioned
there like a
earlier, and I'll
minimum?
just repeat that there are no minimums with senior
Yeah.
helpers. So all the way from 1 hour to round the clock care that we can do, we take a lot of effort in making sure there's the right amount of care, right? It's not just based on hours, but it's based on need. And then the care plans are typically flexible. This question hasn't come up, but it's connected to this one. Like, are the hours flexible? Can it change day by day, week by week? Absolutely, right? We need to make sure that we provide the right kind of care. So we know that people's health conditions will change over time, and thereby our care plan and our care schedules will be flexible accordingly.
Thank you. All right, and then for our next question, I'll pass it to Tracy. So Tracy, do you have any recommendations for families to make home care more successful?
Good question. So there's a lot of different things I think that can make a good partnership. Open communication, like Danielle said, is one of the biggest, goals, I think, for the family, the client, the office, the caregivers, really having an open door policy to be able to let them know that if something isn't working, it's okay. It's not personal. You just call the office, you tell us about it, and we make the appropriate changes. I also would encourage a small care team always. I know that a lot of families want the consistency of one caregiver, but we here at North Central Orange County really try to let the family know that it might be a better approach to have a small, and if I mean small, if it's 1 or 2 shifts a week, have 2 caregivers, at least one backup, so that when and if a caregiver calls out, we won't be sending someone new every time. So I think having a small care team is important. I think letting them know that this is a process, it's a journey. We have to start somewhere, and sometimes that's the hardest part for a family, is to get started with the care. So I always try to let them know that we just have to start somewhere, and then we can make adjustments as we go. And that also involves the care plan. Sometimes when you do an assessment, you might be going to a hospital or a skilled nursing, and an assessment at a skilled nursing and hospital is different from when that client comes home to their own home. It can go either better or worse as far as their needs, but we just don't know. So getting in there, getting started, open communication, building upon the care plan. We also find pop-ins. We have a field support services that comes and pops in with our clients. I think that's very important as well, to have someone coming and supporting the family and seeing how things are going along with the caregiver. A successful home care is really a partnership with the clients, the family, the caregivers, and the agency working together. We want the families to say that I don't feel alone anymore. I feel like I have support, and I know that you're here for us on this journey. So, also with, again, personality of the family, if the family feels like it's going to be helpful for them to leave instructions if they want something done that day specific or that week. If they feel comfortable putting those tasks on a refrigerator or in a notebook or something, we highly recommend that. But definitely communication, I would say, is the most important, and an open door policy.
Thank you for sharing. And now this brings us to our last question, and I'd appreciate it if you each can give a little comment on it. So we'll go across the screen to Kayer first, then Danielle, Estella, then Tracy. But our last question for today is, what do you think is most important for a family to know about home care services? And what's one thing you wish everyone knew about in-home care?
This is a good
So
question.
I'll go to Kayer first.
Most of the calls that we get start with, what is home care? How does it work? What does it cost? Is it covered by insurance? And what are the services, right? So these are some of the most common questions. It's important for families to know that home care services are there as a support for them. They're non-medical services. The care plans and the care schedules can be adjusted over time. It is typically not covered by your traditional medical and health insurance, although long term care insurance does cover some parts of home care. There are some other funding sources as well, one of them being our partners here with you guys at the Caregiver Resource Center. And so, the one thing that I wish people knew is that it's very important to keep the health and wellness of our loved ones in mind. So even if you need a little bit of care, don't hesitate to get started, right? It's a little bit is going to go a long way. So don't worry about how are we going to take care of their overall health situation. Take one day at a time. Getting some peace of mind for the family members and some respite for the family caregiver is absolutely critical for their long-term health and well-being.
Sorry about that. Can you hear me now? Okay. I agree with everything Kayor said, especially about starting early. It's never too early to start. What I would say, what's important for families to know about home care services, we get these calls, and a lot of times it's really focused on what their loved one can't do. And I think that it's really important for quality of life. We want we want these people to be treated with dignity and respect, and we want them to enjoy these days. And so a lot of times I ask families, what can they do? What do they enjoy to do? And it's okay to think about those things as well. I know a lot of times families can get really busy and maybe even feel guilty sometimes for not being able to spend the time, but that's what I wish everyone knew about in-home care services is that that's okay. You've got to live your life. You got things to take care of, and it is possible for your loved one to live this wonderful life with in-home care services supporting them to do that.
So for me, I think what's important for a family to know about home care services at that it is not about taking their independence away. It's really about providing the right level of support so that someone can maintain that independence for as long as possible. And so one thing I wish more families knew is that also you don't have to wait for a crisis to start home care. Actually, before would sometimes be better, preventative. So because we often think of caregiving as only when someone can no longer manage on their own, but like I said, support can actually begin much earlier, and it'll put the families at ease because even a few hours of assistance can help someone maintain their independence, stay engaged, and remain safely in the home they're comfortable in, and provide the family with the much needed relief, as mentioned, because the priority is to keep the independence for as long as possible because we know how someone feels. A lot of seniors or anyone who needs the help, they want to be in their home. So we want to make that happen. So yeah, we are here for you.
Love that. So I would add on to that as well and just say we're a phone call away. I think people might get it confused with they have to do, and some agencies do have minimums. Some agencies do have 20 hours or whatever it might be, but a phone call away is really important. And like Danielle, I think she just said about not waiting till the last minute to where there is an urgent emergency, having an agency, a good reputable agency in your back pocket where you can just pick up the phone if something was to happen, or even if you're the caregiver and let's say you got the flu, that you could call that agency and know that they're a phone call away and they've got you. So I think that's important because seniors, we're not getting younger. Time is going on, and the reality is that the care needs are probably going to progress. So here we are, and we've got you. And the confidence of knowing that and not feeling pressured like it's a monthly, what would it be, like a subscription or something like that. That's not what it is. It's a support system.
Thank you all so much. And yeah, thank you all again. I really appreciate you all taking the time this afternoon to share your wisdom and knowledge when it comes to accessing in-home care. Our county and families are tremendously blessed to have you all as a resource. So again, just thank you. And if for the viewers out there, if you have any questions or need more support, please feel free to give us a call at 714-446-5030. We have more resources on this topic on our website at caregiveroc.org. And thank you all for joining us this afternoon, and have a beautiful, blessed day. Thank you.
Thank you, Abby.
Thank you, everybody.
Bye, y'all.
Thank you.
Thanks.